All right, welcome to Read the Line Celebrity Insider for the week of the U.S. Women's Open. And I have a treat for everybody today. We have PGA professional, golfing guru, coach extraordinaire, Mr. David Orr, good friend of mine, with me. And his coaching home base is Pine Needles Lodge and Golf Club, which is the host of the 77th Women's U.S. Open this week. So, David, welcome to the show. I can't wait to talk to you about all that's going on down there at Pine Needles. I'm sure the place is electric, and there's probably a pretty cool vibe going on there.
Well, Keith, it's great to see you again. I got to see you a couple weeks ago there in Tulsa at the PGA. So good to catch up here on the show and talk a little bit about pine needles.
So, Pine Needles, for those who've never been, all right, I know we've had 3 U.S. Women's Opens there before, but for those that have never been, when you first come on property, whether you're going to play or you're a fan, what's your first impression of the golf club?
Well, it's an old school vibe, right? I mean, it's got the old uh, style feel with the wood and the pines everywhere, pine needles. Obviously, that's why it's called pine needles, but pine trees and pine straw. And you go into the clubhouse, it's old school. Even though they've renovated it, they've recarpeted it. They've done a lot of things, but they've kept that 1950s vibe to the club, and that's what's really cool about all the upgrades is they haven't modernized. They've kept it very, very traditional. Um, yeah, Pine Needles Lodge and Golf Club is one of those cool golf courses that it was actually originally a part of Pinehurst Country Club back in the 1920s. Pinehurst built it as an overflow guest course, as well as the Mid Pines across the street was also an overflow to Pinehurst Country Club. So the Bell family, Mrs. Bell and Bullitt, bought just the golf course, 18 holes back in the 1950s. I can't give you the exact dates. I should know these dates, but what's really interesting is on the second hole, if you look back behind the second tee, there's this huge old school hotel, which used to be the hotel to the golf course, but the Bells didn't buy the hotel. So instead, they built their own little lodges each year around the 18th hole and around the driving range and etc. So it's pretty cool, and it's still family owned business. One of the few family owned golf courses still. It's run basically by Mrs. Bell's son-in-law Kelly Miller and his wife Peg Ann, and also her sister Bonnie and her husband Pat McGowan. Um, and so yeah, it's pretty cool to have a U.S. Open at a family-owned golf course. Like,
I didn't know that. That's awesome. That is very cool.
yeah, and Pine Needles is it's in the Sand Hills. It's got the pine trees, the pine straw, the sand, the Bermuda, the wet, grainy, sandy, into the grain Bermuda. So, what makes this golf course tough is let's just start with the greens. There are lots of crown,
Okay.
lots of movement in the greens. It was designed by Donald Ross, but now it's been renovated by Kyle Franz, who's a on-site architect. Um, and yeah, so the greens, you have to be able to putt well. You have to be able to make putts inside of 8 feet because there's a lot of movement. You'll see double, triple, quadruple breaking putts. So the good thing about
You
multiple breaking putts is putts net out to straighter, if that makes sense, as opposed to one plane where there's
sure.
one big breaking movement. But so to start off with is the greens and the hole locations. So the USGA can get really tricky with the hole locations. Uh, for instance, the first hole is a par five. It's a dogleg to the right, par five.
Yeah.
Um, and if they put the pin in the back, especially the back right, you can hit a nice little shot to about 5 feet and watch it roll off the back and down off the shaved fringes and shaved fairway. So here you were at 5 feet, and now you're probably putting from off the green is another interesting strategy, as opposed to pulling out that 60-degree lob wedge. That's not the first option. In Pinehurst area golf
Okay.
courses, you need to putt from off the green first if you can. The next choice, club of choice, would be like a little hybrid bump and run, or a little chip with an 8 or 9 iron into the slope and let the slope kill some of the speed. And then if you have to go over a bunker, then you use your lob wedge or sand wedge or whatever you would need. So that's another unique thing. So you can see here that we're starting from the green. There's lots of movement. There's lots of difficult
Yep.
hole locations. There's going to be multiple breaking putts, and you can play this game of up and back, up and back, up and back with your putting and chipping if you're on the wrong side, if you're short sided, or yeah. So and then we get into the bunkers where if you look like you're going to hit the green, all of a sudden you get a little bounce and it's down in the bunker. So I guess what we're saying is Pine Needles protects itself with its green complexes. That's how Pine
Well,
Needles defends its score, if that makes
the the three champions that they've had there for the women's U.S. Open. You know, you're talking about Christy Kerr, Kari Webb, and Annika Sorenstam, like three of the greatest players, and also like really pragmatic players. You know, like game planners. You know, great putters, but also good ball strikers. You know that. How important will having played there before be for some of these ladies, like having previous experience, practice rounds, etc.? Is it a golf course that you can learn quickly?
Well, I mean, the golf course is straight up in front of you. I mean, there's no tricks to it. It's not a Mickey Mouse golf course at all. It's a championship golf course. I was gonna keep working back, so I'll answer that question. Keep working back from the green
Go ahead.
and around the greens. Now you're back into the fairways, which used to be the golf course when I've been at Pine Needles twice now, from 2000 to 2004, and then from 2017 on to the present. So this is my second time there. And when I played Pine Needles back in the day, pretty easy golf course, tee to green, But Kyle
Okay.
Franz has now changed it to where they're using more natural areas instead of wide open rough. There's natural areas. So yeah, you might get lucky and have a good lie in a sandy natural area that's kind of hard pan, but then you might be under one of those little um, bushes that they have. So, when you're looking at the golf course, it just has beautiful shape and beautiful layout. And the first hole is a par five. The second hole, it's a birdieable par five if you know how to hit your tee shot in the correct side of the fairway to where you can approach the green from the left and get to the pin location, and you can birdie the first hole. Second hole, you better I don't know what length they're playing it at, but you better bring your A game because it's a formidable tee shot. Kind of shapes its way down the fairway with natural areas, but the key to the green is it slopes from front to back. A lot of people don't
Oh,
realize it.
okay.
So you're sitting there in the fairway, you got your little 8 iron, 7 iron, 6 iron in there. And what's interesting is it's got a false front on the front part. So there's like a little crown at the very front of the green, then it falls away, like directly toward the road. And there's out of bounds behind the road. So you can sit there and in the
Oh,
fairway have a great tee shot at the second hole, and you can come up short, and then you end up chipping. Or you can actually land on the green and go over the green. And if you're hitting it a little too hot coming in there, you can face them out of bounds in the back. So it can second hole right off the bat, boom. You know what I mean? Just wash out that birdie
sure.
from the first hole. And then the third hole is a simple par three. I mean, it's like 125 yards over water, over a well protected green with bunkers. But I mean, it's just a straight up shot. And, being below the hole is huge because it is tilted from back to front. And they have put some movement in there. But hole three is really good. So, I mean, if you're on your game, you can get to 1 or 2 under through first three real quick. But this is a USGA championship, and I
Yeah.
can't remember what they said the greens were. I haven't been home in 4 weeks. I've been on the road myself, but I think if the greens are rolling 11 and a half, 12 and a half with that much movement, it's gonna be a lot of three putting going on. Kari Webb, Christy Kerr, Annika Sorenstam. They're all intelligent players. I think
Yeah.
Pine Needles is require a tremendous amount of patience, a tremendous amount of mental toughness and discipline to be able to hit the ball to the right portion of the green to give yourself an easier opportunity. If you're just sitting there hunting pins, great, you might get rewarded, but you might get punished. So the front nine is pretty. Uh, it's gettable, but not too low, if that makes sense. The greens really do protect themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on
I
to the
want to
back
jump in there
nine.
for a second. Let me just jump in there for a second because you brought up the weather, right? And you talked about the temperature. But what I'm really concerned about is also the ground conditions. How much of this game is going to be played this week on the ground? Has it been raining a bunch lately in that area? I know you said you've been out of town, but I mean, you could tell by where you live, what the course conditions are going to be like.
I've been on the road for 4 weeks straight. So I've been in UK and I've been PGA Championship and obviously out to Austin for Charles Schwab. But I mean, typical spring weather. I mean, pretty hot, pretty humid, pretty dry in the morning, and then afternoon thunderstorm. That's just North Carolina. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I hadn't had a chance to talk to anybody at Pine Needles about the conditions. I did see the superintendent, and he just kind of told me about how the greens had come back. Last year they had a little spots here and there, but the greens have come back. I noticed that they were starting to speed up when I left. Um, they
Okay.
they just closed the golf course. I was down there for a couple of days, and they just closed the golf course and didn't allow anybody on the golf course for like 2-3 weeks before the. So these are going to be perfect conditions, and the greens were speeding up. Difference if it we talk about this all the time. Draw is very important. Are you a morning late or late versus morning? You know what I'm saying? So your draw on a
Sure.
Thursday versus a Friday. Um, yeah, so morning late or late early plays a part because of weather, right? Winds pick up or um, greens have traffic on them, so all those things affect score, right? So, um, but I
Definitely.
don't think Pine Needles would be any different. Surprised if it's like those early times in the morning where you still have some dew, you know what I mean, on the golf
Sure.
course, and it's a little moist and it's sandy and into the grain Bermuda. The only exception is it's not dormant Bermuda. That's when it's really brutal. But it's grown in Bermuda, and yeah, so don't be surprised to see a few leading edges get stuck into the turf a little bit. You have to
Mhm.
be somebody that can really control the depth of your arc. So when we're using a chipping or pitching or something, you have to control the depth of the arc, how deep it goes into either the grass or the soil. So somebody that can really kind of
Sure.
pick it or sweep it, or you know what I mean, not too deep of an angle of or a depth of arc, or somebody that knows how to control their angle of attack will do well. So if somebody's steep and they got to hit ball first, they're going to have a hard time. But when you're
Okay.
shallow, you don't have to hit ball first and still be successful. So that type of technique is critical um, in the Sandhills area. So
All right. There's certain skills that you need to get around the golf course. There's driving the golf ball, there's an approach game, there's around the green, there's putting. Which of the four would you weight the heaviest to get around Pine Needles?
hmm, usually, I wouldn't say one. Usually, usually in golf, if you can drive it the furthest and putt the best, you're going to win. It's called the power to putting
All right.
principle. My friend Rich Hunt, who's a PGA Tour statistician, went over that with me. He goes, look at DJ, look at Brooks Koepka, look at the guys that hit it the furthest, right, and putt well tend to win.
Yep.
Now you take a guy like Tiger though, who won most of his tournaments by iron approach and putting, right? So what's interesting is if I had to narrow it down for Pine Needles, you have to putt well. Because usually that's not the case.
Okay.
Usually you can gain strokes off the tee, you can gain strokes approaching the green, putting usually doesn't matter, but it does matter in major competition because of the green speed, the hole locations, and you got to have a gift. You got to be able to bomb it and putt it. You got to be able either or do like Tiger did, and just keep giving yourself opportunities to capitalize on it. So I think it's a combination.
All right.
And if you have that player that's pretty solid in all four areas, I think if I mean, I tell you what, if I were playing and they offered me to sign a card for even right now before I even teed off, I think I'd take that.
Yep.
You know,
I love it. I love it.
I mean, you don't think that way, do you? Right? But I mean, if you just look at the history of the USGA, go ahead.
No, I, you know, you work there. You know, I mean, you know the golf course, and you know the hole locations they can come up with, and you know how firm and fast it'll play. I mean, if you tell me that now, then that changes the way that I approach, you know, handicapping the event. Because if you look at the past tournaments that have been there, right? There's basically only been one or two people that have been under par. You know,
Okay,
Annika won. Go ahead.
I'm interested in hearing what the scores were with each champion. Go ahead.
All right, so Annika, she shot 8 under, and she won by 6 shots. Okay, Kari Webb, she shot 7 under, and she won by 8 shots. So she was the only player under par. And then Christy Kerr, she won it. And then Christy Kerr shot 5 under, and she won by 2 shots. So I'm looking at all this, and I'm like, man, you know, like whoever's competing there, there's only a couple people under par at best, if only one. And it seems like somebody either got just really, really good with the putter, or their whole game. I mean, you're looking at Annika and Kari Webb, two of the greatest golfers in modern time on the ladies' side. So, you know, like they probably got hot with all aspects of their game, and that's why they boat raced people. But at the end of the day, like, I think that's coming again. I mean, you talk about all that movement, David, right? Someone's got to be really skilled in and around those greens to hold it together for 72 holes and shoot even par or better.
Major championship.
Yeah.
It's not a regular tour stop. It's a major championship hosted by the USGA at a championship venue. And, you know, if I shot 1 under for 4 days, how many times am I going to win that championship or be runner up? You know, but even still top 10, agreed? Is even top 10 in all of those?
Oh, yeah.
And you don't have to tee it up? You know what I mean?
Even the top 5, David, in all of those.
Yeah. You know, so, yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be somebody under par, maybe 1 or 2, but I don't think it's going to be like what people normally expect.
Yeah.
It just really depends.
Well, I can't wait to watch.
It depends on where they put the holes, and it depends on how they're playing it. I mean, it can be as tough as nails, or, you know, you can give them accessible pin locations. It just depends. Only the USGA knows where they're going to put them. But what's interesting, if I were a player, one of the guys I work for on the PGA Tour has every hole location, every pin sheet he's ever had of every golf course he's ever played. So when he goes to a venue, he knows, hey, that's 17 on, 6 from the right. Put a fake hole there. Go 6 on from the left, 6 on and 6 from the left. Put a hole location there. Go 24 on and 5 from the left. Put a hole location there. It's because he studied the hole locations for, you know, years. So if you're a seasoned vet and have played Pine Needles and you kind of know where the hole locations are going to be, or you happen to get a pin sheet from the U.S. Senior Women's Open that Helen won, right? You kind of get an idea where these things are going to be. Now, an experienced player can sit there and go, okay, how many pinnable locations are there really? You know, because the rule says you put it anywhere pretty much on the green, but there's this relationship between stimp and slope. So the faster the green, they can't be on as steep as hole location. So when you start looking at a green, yes, you could put the hole anywhere, but there's really not as much pinnable locations as one would think, especially with greens with a lot of movement. You know, so that now you're looking at little areas of like, you know, 4 or 5 or 6 areas on the green where they're going to be. That makes sense.
Well, hey, I tell you, I can't wait to see the whole thing unfold. I think it's going to be tremendous theater. I love a classically designed Donald Ross golf course. I love how players have to use the ground more than the air. So I just can't wait to see it all. And I can't thank you enough for giving us a preview like that, David. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Thanks so much.
All right, Keith. Great to see you. I'll see you in Boston.
Yes, man. We'll see you.
All right.
That's it, folks. Break down Pine Needles for the women's biggest championship of the year, the U.S. Open.